This week, President Donald Trump indicated he plans to review the content of Smithsonian museums, claiming they focus too much on uncomfortable aspects of U.S. history rather than the country's accomplishments. In a social media post, Trump claimed the Smithsonian is out of control and its topics are, quote, horrible. He specifically cited its documentation of slavery. This latest threat follows an executive order signed in March outlining a plan to make the institutions a place of inspiration. Trump says if the Smithsonian continues to promote what he calls divisive ideology, then he will pull the museum's funding. The Smithsonian website says it is the world's largest museum complex with 21 museums and a national zoo. For more on this, I'd like to bring in Yohuru Williams. He is a history professor at the University of St. Thomas. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Did you ever think you would be having a conversation like this in the first place, hearing Trump's comments?
Quite frankly, before Trump's first presidency, no. But given what we saw the last time Trump was in office, I think a lot of people anticipated that this might be a course that he would take with regard to the Smithsonian in this effort to whitewash U.S. history.
What do you think of his comments when he says the museum focuses on these uncomfortable parts of American history, including slavery? How concerning is that to you?
Very, because it's very clear that the president is not knowledgeable at all about the process by which the Smithsonian and other institutions have gone about really reviewing what's appropriate with regard to a presentation of the complex history of the United States. It's also untrue that the United States, or that many museums in the United States, focus on slavery in the way that the president describes. It's more the propaganda that we've seen, unfortunately, here in the United States, and efforts by the Trump administration to divert attention away from real issues and to focus on these cultural touchstones, which are not based in reality, but the president's fantasies about an imagined America that, quite frankly, that museums like the Smithsonian do a very good job of correcting the record of and saying, that's a mythology. The reality is that we've had huge challenges in this nation with regard to economic, social, and political inequality. Slavery is a good example of that. And telling that history honestly can be a great compass for the nation, for young people in particular, to avoid those challenges in the future.
We know that President Trump has said these Smithsonian museums are, quote, out of control. But explain to our viewers exactly what would be lost if Trump was able to control what's featured in museums like the Smithsonian.
A great deal. And I think this is part of the concern in this moment. People elected Trump as president of the United States, commander in chief of the military. People did not elect Donald Trump to set the nation's curriculum. This is still a democratic republic. And the reality is that if you whitewash history in this way, what you ultimately destroy is the inability or the ability of people to recognize the challenges that I mentioned earlier, but also to have a correct portrait of the past in a way that would empower them to think creatively about how we navigate the present and how we reimagine the future. And we can see this in a variety of issues with regard to race, with regard to class, with regard to working people, gender. And museums really need the latitude to be able to tell that story in all of its complexity. The fact that the president has sent in a team of lawyers to do this work, rather than if this were a legitimate inquiry. And even then, I think there'd be questions about it. But if legitimately the president said, we want to send in a team of scholars to review and to make sure that we're covering all sides, it would be a different conversation. But even then, given the way that the administration has politicized everything, I think red flags would be raised. This current approach, though, is a clear indication that the administration has very little respect for these institutions. We saw it with higher education. We're now seeing it with the Smithsonian. And it's really an attempt by President Trump to remake these institutions in his own flawed image, an imagination of what this great America that never was.
We only have about a minute left, but you are a professor of history. Given the conversation we're having right now, how concerned are you for younger students or the next generations?
I'm terrified because we've seen this happen not only in terms of this national effort to whitewash institutions like the museum, but we've seen it in terms of higher education and efforts to really restrict what's taught in K-12 education. So I think all U.S. citizens should be very concerned about this and should be working to push back, not only to preserve that history, but also to work toward restoring what was an effort for young people to think critically about the past, to empower them to how to act in a participatory democracy toward a better future.
This conversation in and of itself is likely food for thought for so many, not only Americans, but for those watching this around the world. Yohuru Williams, thank you so much for your time and for your insight this morning.
Thanks for having me.